Be the first to like, share, and subscribe to my YouTube channel.
Welcome to DC Economics. So today I'm going to take you on introductory part about microeconomics. The major purpose of this lecture is to explain the scope and method of economics. Among other issues, you will learn that economics essential focuses on the problem of making the best use of resources in order to satisfy human wants. Since there are numerous wants that we cannot fulfill with our meager resources, economics is very much concerned with the scarcity of choice. When we speak about scarcity of choice, we actually mean that the available resources cannot meet each and every needs of people. And that's why in economics, we need to learn on how we can utilize or we can organize proper the available economic resources to meet the required needs or the required ends. And that's why you actually realize for emergence of what is known as opportunity cost and choices. So this has come because there is a scarcity of resources in the economy. A good grasp of macroeconomics is thus extremely vital for making rational economic choices, formulating managerial decisions, and designing public policy. So this lecture provides a framework upon which subsequent lectures are built. It defines economics and explains the difference between microeconomics and macroeconomics. It then introduces you to the basic concepts such as opportunity cost and production possibility frontier. We call it PPF. So what you need to understand, the issue of opportunity cost is actually foregoing a certain decision. And production possibility frontier, this is a locus of point that actually show what quantity is produced in the economy with a certain amount of output and at a given technique of production. So in economics, you cannot ignore the issue of choice, since the available resources cannot fully fulfill each and every need of people. So this lecture also identifies the three fundamental questions that every society must answer and discusses the approaches used by economists. Finally, this lecture introduces you to the methodology of economics analysis with practical examples. So after reading this lecture, you should be able to define what is economics, to make a distinction between macroeconomics and microeconomics, whereby this distinction actually shows that macroeconomics deals with aggregate of the whole economy, while the microeconomics deals with the aggregate of individual economy. When you speak about the issue of consumers, producers, how they interact, get the price, you speak about micro. And when you speak about national income, unemployment, such factor like that, we speak about macroeconomics. So after reading this lecture, you should be capable to understand these two concepts, macroeconomics and microeconomics. Also, another issue you need to understand after this topic, you should be able to explain the basic economic problems the macroeconomic addresses, but also define and explain the concept of opportunity cost, and it will select this concept graphical using the production possibility frontier we call PPF. Fifth, you should be able also to explain how different economic systems attempt to solve the central economic problems. And sixth, you should be able to outline the limitations of price mechanism. But also, not only that, you should be able to explain, to define and explain the concept of opportunity cost and state the concept graphically. Let's now begin with economics. Economics, actually, this is a branch of social science that studies on how different societies allocate scarce resources among alternative uses. As long as human wants are many and in general include goods and services that people desire, typical whole human societies, for example, need schools, roads, buildings, hospitals, recreation facilities, and many others. So actually economics, some people also define as a branch of science that deals on how we can properly utilize our available resources. We can actually economize the available economic resources so as to meet the potential needs, to meet the potential ends with no wastage. So typical, all human societies, for example, need schools, as I told you, roads, buildings. These are important needs of people, but you cannot fulfill them at once. So economics resources, on the other hand, are inputs such as land, capital, labor, which are used to produce goods and services, which are in turn used to satisfy human wants. Economic resources are usual command non-zero price, but free resources do not. And virtual, all societies are faced with common problem of allocating scarce resources to satisfy their wants. All societies are faced with this problem. That's why the societies need water, need sufficient food. Some other countries. So some societies lack some of the important needs. That's why you cannot have a certain balance of income and purchase goods and services to all the required needs that you have. Since your income is limited, you need to make a choice on your consumptions of those goods and services. So the most pressing ones include food, housing, clothing, and actual since resources are scarce in relation to their demand, the study of economics has become a major discipline over the past 3 centuries. So the question of how resources should be allocated for production of different products at different times has warranted the study of economics. The study of economics has come get involved in this uh, in some days, in some centuries. This is because of the fact that we need actually the proper allocation of resources, since our resources are scarce in one way or another, and human ones are unlimited, and human ones actually are mimic. For that case, we need actually a knowledge. We need to apply the economics knowledge and to make out a way proper and well organized of our resources to meet their potential needs. So economics is divided into two branches. We have what we call microeconomics and we have what is known as macroeconomics. Macroeconomics actually deals with individual aggregate economy. It studies the behavior of relationship among the individual parts of the economy, such as consumers, producers, buyers, and sellers, and how they interact both determine and are determined by a system of market prices. So microeconomics actually deals with the individual aggregate economy and not the whole economy. This is quite different from macroeconomics. So when you speak about microeconomics, you speak about producers, consumers, and how they interact, how they're affected by price level in the economy. So macroeconomics examine the factors affect economic choices and how changes in these factors affect such choices. And market coordinate the choices of various decision makers. So macroeconomics, it deals with the aggregate of the whole economy. It is studies of the entire economy in the terms of total amount of goods and services produced, the total income earned, the level of employment of productive resources, and the general behavior of the prices. So when you speak about macroeconomics, you speak about issues related to what is known as national income, the total GDP, the national GDP. Speaking about unemployment, the total interest rate. All these issues are addressed throughout macroeconomics. Sometimes the actual many of the economists refers that the base of macroeconomics comes from the base of microeconomics. Although for that case, different theories and different approaches has been developed for both macroeconomics and microeconomics. Macroeconomics can be used to analyze on how best to influence policy goals such as economic growth, price stability, full employment, interest rate in the attainment of a sustainable balance of payments. It is very important to understand that the boundary between microeconomics and macroeconomics has increased become narrow in recent years. The reason is that just like microeconomics and macroeconomics are also involved in the analysis of aggregate market for goods and services and the factors of production. So macroeconomics actually based on explaining the whole economy. What occurs generally in the economy, at the whole economy, not individual, is actually guarded on macroeconomics. So long as macroeconomics tend to bring solution to the issues concerned about the general economy and not only individual economy. And actual macroeconomics is quite different from microeconomics. It's tend to play a big role in controlling out the economy. You can observe different skills like a nation skills are developed from these macroeconomics, giving the solution how we can solve unemployment, issue of inflation rate, and so many other factors like that. So for that case, to understand how these aggregate markets operate, one must first understand the behavior of the firms, consumers, and investors who make up those aggregate markets. Let's come to the issue of choice and opportunity cost. Choice are necessary because resources are scarce since we cannot produce everything we would like to consume or spend. That's why we make choices. Somebody may ask you why you make choice. We make choice because the available resources are not sufficient to fulfill each and every need. Also, individuals face unlimited income. That's why we need to make a choice. That's when you go to the market, you cannot purchase each and everything you see. You need to make a choice. A decision to satisfy one set of wants necessary means sacrifice some other needs. We actually call this concept as opportunity cost. It's out giving of sacrifice. Opportunity cost is the best alternative, which is foregone whenever an economic decision is made. So the concept of opportunity cost is irrelevant to anyone who is allocating his or her limited income on alternative goods and services. So actual the issue of opportunity cost actual observe to show out you need to make a sacrifice to ignore one thing and take another thing. For example, a decision by the government to build a new bridge may mean, for example, giving up the opportunity to construction of maternal wards. You can choose to watch a television or read a book. One among the factors that we ignore imply that you make it opportunity cost. Production possibility frontier. This is a locus of points that join together the different combination of goods and services within a country can produce with available resources and the efficient technique of production. So with limited resources, an economy is usually confronted with limited production possibilities for productions of goods and services. So we can use the production possibility frontier to illustrate the concept of choice, scarcity, and opportunity cost. For example, we may assume for simplicity we are talking about the Tanzania economy. The economy of Tanzania produces only two commodities. Let's take an example. It is food. It is food and clothes. So when you try to draw out the graph that shows the locus of point for this production of Tanzania economy, we actually observe to be like this. In the left hand side we have the food in kilogram, and at the x-axis we have clothes in meters. So in this locus of point we have FO, that is the lines cut up to point A up to point C. Then we have the F1 that cut at point from point D to point C, going straight forward to point B up to x-axis is C1. So these points as you observe out, it showed point A, point D, point E, and point B. Point A, D, and B show that there is a proper utilization of economic resources that enable easy output of production. But point E actually implies that there was no proper utilization of economic resources for production of a given output. So all the points A, D, and B actually realize that there was utilization of resources. And point E actually implies that there was underutilization of economic resources. So all points inside the line, such as point D, represent a combination which can be produced using the less than available supply of resources. Points outside the line, such as E, represent out the combination which are not feasible due to scarcity of resources. So the increasing slope indicates that increasing opportunity cost as more and more of other product is produced. So the increasing slope indicates that increasing opportunity cost as more and more of other product is produced. So this graph actually implies explaining easy the issue of opportunity cost and how the scarcity of resources enable underutilization and overutilization of economic resources. So all the point E actually implies that there was no any proper utilization of economic resources for the given production for output. Maybe it can be crosses or food in kilograms. So the increasing slope indicates that the opportunity cost as more and more of either product is produced. Now let's come to the concept of the central economic problems. So economic problems arise because human wants are limited while the resources available to satisfy such wants are unlimited. But if an economy were to have unlimited wants and unlimited resources, there would be no need to study economics. Moreover, there would be no economic problems because the economy would be able to satisfy all of its wants from the available resources. And actually, this is actually true. If there could know what is known as unlimited wants, unlimited resources, there could be no need to study economics because economics arises because of unlimited wants, because of what is known as unlimited wants, and what is known as limited resources. Actually, we cannot meet each and every needs because of scarcity of resources and the limited ones of people. So we need to apply the knowledge of economics that enable us to use our knowledge to make sure that we allocate proper the available resources to meet those needs. Now, consequently, every economy is faced with these three core problems. That is, what to produce, how to produce, and for whom to produce. What to produce refers to those goods and services and the quantity of each that the economy should produce. So since resources are scarce or limited, no economy can produce everything or as much of goods and services desired by all members in society. So in issue of what to produce, this is the key core economic problem that every agent of economy asks himself or herself in his mind. So actually you should think of what to produce since you cannot produce each and everything that you like. You should make a research and make sure that you produce something that will give you output, something that will be required by potential consumers so as we can attain a profit. That's why this is because that the available resources, this is because of scarcity of resources. And actually you are limited in income. You are limited in income for the start of your business, for investment of your business. So you should think of what to produce so as you can able to meet the required consumers to purchase what you produce. And if you will not do so, actually you are going to enter into a risk of your business collapsing and not attaining the required profit. So the societies must choose exactly which goods and services to produce and how much of each to produce. Another question, another core economic problem we should ask ourselves is how to produce. This refers to the choice of the combination of factors and the particular technique to use in producing goods and services. Since goods and services can normally be produced with the different combinations and different techniques, the problem arises which technique is appropriate to use in such kind of production. On how to produce, you must think on how much quantity you should produce. And those quantities, what are we going to apply to meet the required needs, the required ends? So this refers to how much of the wants of each consumers are able to satisfy. In every economy, no society can satisfy all of the wants of its people. That's why we should be very keen on to choose on how to produce. This is a very important concept that one should analyze. So for whom to produce is very much important question to ask. You produce those goods to meet what kind of consumers in the market? What kind of people are going to purchase your goods? You're producing for whom? Since you cannot produce everything and assume that they are going to be purchased with everyone, you should also be targeted for what you produce. And actually, we do so because available economic resources are scarcity and there's a limited ones. So you should be very keen on make sure on you get an answer, a good you take out a good picture that will enable you to attain a profit or the income if you are doing a business or you have a firm or you're operating industries or a factory. So in every society's productions and supply of goods and services is always smaller than the demand for them. For this reason now, the economy should find a method to distribute goods and services among the people as equitably as possible. So it is important to note that the above economic problems constitute the scope of macroeconomics. In other words, microeconomics analysis is very much preoccupied with analysis of three central economic problems. For that case, it is very important to make sure that you come with actual results when you actually look on the scope of macroeconomics and when you apply the macroeconomic analysis. And macroeconomic analysis is very much preoccupied with analysis of three central economic problems, that is, how to produce, for whom to produce, and where to produce. So in every society's production and supply of goods and services is always smaller than the demand. The supply of goods is actually very smaller than the demand. This is because the market is shaken with an equilibrium. Sometimes, because the available resources are missing, you can find you produce, but those who consume are limited in income. Or you may actually find yourself that you lack of supply and the demand is higher. So let's come to the concept of economic systems and solution to the central economic problems. We have discussed earlier on core economic problems, how to produce, for whom to produce, where to produce. But we can ask ourselves, what solution are we giving to these kind of core economic problems? So there are three types of economic systems that answer the solution for these three core economic problems. That is market economy, that is free market economy, planned economy, mixed economic system. So market economy, this is an economic system in which the production and distribution of goods and services take place through the mechanism of price market, guided by a free price system. Market economy, or it's sometimes called a free market economy, is an economic system that the issue of what you produce, the issue of production, distribution of goods and services is taking place through the force of demand and supply in the market. Everything is controlled through the system of the market. And actually, there is only small room for the government to intervene in such kind of market. This kind of market system provides a wide room for any player agent who wishes to maximize profit, to work best, and to have a room to struggle to make sure is attaining profit based or relying to the price system in the market. So actually, this is one among it is catalyzed with competitive nature, and actually provide a consumer sovereignty in each and everything. So the issue of what to produce under this kind of market is solved by producers to think on what is potential needed by the consumers in relation to the market property of its information. The how to produce is solved by using the best available technique that usually results in the least cost of production. So if the price of the factor rises in relation to other, we switch to a technique that uses the less of more expensive factors in order to minimize the cost of production. So on how to produce is solved by using the available technique. Must choose which technique is the most favorable in production. Are you going to apply more intensive labor technique, or you're going to apply the capital labor technique? Which technique enable you to minimize cost and to attain the required needs or the required output? So the issue of how to produce and what to produce gives the solutions that kind answering this kind of market economic system. So if the price of the factor rises, in relating to others used in the production of goods and services, the producer will switch to a technique that wants less of the more expensive factors in order to minimize the cost of production. So you switch to the technique that uses the less technique for production. For whom to produce is solved by producing these commodities that satisfy the wants of the people who have money to pay for them. You may think you are asking yourself, I'm producing this kind of commodities. Who are going to be my consumer? Actually, this is kind of question is solved by you produce the commodities that you make sure that when you produce, there will be people who pay for what you have produced. Thus, in a market economy, the economic problems can be solved by help of the price mechanism, as I told you earlier. So the market economy is considered efficient system of market because the society produces only those goods and services required by consumers. This kind of market economy is considered to be efficient than other kind of market systems like command economy and planned economic system. This is because this type of economic system provide a wide room for consumer to struggle, to play out, to have what is known as a playing games with price system in the market. So you can make a profit or you can make it a loss regardless of what you are striving, what you are fighting, regardless of the information in the market system. So regardless of that, is market system is filled with some limitations, or sometimes called market failure. Market failure is a term used to describe the situation in which reliance on the market mechanism will not lead to the desired outcome as viewed from the society's perspective. So these are the limitation of price mechanisms, or we sometimes call the free market economic system, or under what is known as market failure. The market failure for this is actually that the price mechanism relies heavily on the free play of the supply and demand factors. Second, the price mechanism relies heavily on consumer sovereignty. Actually, this kind of market system provides a wide room for consumer sovereignty to purchase on what actual alike and at a given choice of a price. Consumer sovereignty is the economic condition in which the consumer detects which goods and services will be produced by businesses. Consumer sovereignty is based on the assumption that each individual is the best judge of what makes him or her better off. But consumers may sometimes be responsible for wrong choices. It may happen so. In consumer sovereignty provide a wide room for consumer to meet different kind of sellers in the market and to be able to bargain on certain price that will be favorable for a consumer to take the goods and services. First, another limitation is that efficient market requires well-informed participants. However, markets are catalyzed by information asymmetry. So when we speak about information asymmetry, occurs when the one party to a transaction has more or better information than the other party. Free market economic system is first with what is known as information asymmetry. Since you can find some consumers are actually aware of the prices, others not aware. In the presence of externalities, market prices and market equilibrium will be suboptimal. Another weakness, another limitations of free market economic system, in the presence of externalities, market prices and market equilibrium will be suboptimal. The concept of externalities, this is an effect of one economic agent activities on another well-being that is taken into account, that is not taken into account by the normal operation of the price system. So detrimental effects affect a third party. Externalities can be classified as positive or negative. Positive externalities include things like public goods and research. And negative externalities are detrimental negative effects that affect the third party. Negative externalities include things like air pollution. In general, goods and services that generate positive externalities will tend to be undersupplied in the market. You'll find most of the quantities that are supplied in the markets are those quantities that are produced with externalities. Bear in mind that externalities is produced because under free market economic system, many of the consumers target on income, but not target on welfare of the people. So in the presence of public goods, the market may fail. In the presence of public goods, the market may fail to generate the optimal allocation of resources from the society's point of view. Now, let's come to the third types of economic system known as planned or command economy. The second type, command economy, these are economic systems in which a single agent makes all the decisions about the productions and the allocation of goods and services and about the distribution of income. A planned economy may either consist of the state-owned enterprises or by the states or combinations of both. And a planned economic system or each of what's produced, allocations is done under the rule of the state itself. It does not provide any room for anything that taking business activities to be operated under the price system in the market. Government is in charge of each and everything in this kind of market. In short, in a common economy, a planning commission appointed by the president or the ruling party determine exactly what it produces and how and for whom to produce. And sometimes government intervene even in setting of price level for selling of goods and services. Example, in Tanzania, tried to practice this type of economic system after the promulgation of the Arusha Declaration in 1967 up to 1985. So Tanzania country was among the countries that get involved in this kind of economic system in that year of 1967 during the time of Arusha Declaration to year 1985. Another third types of economic system is mixed economic system. And a mixed economic system, this is defined as a system of economy that contains both private-owned and state-owned enterprises, or mix of the market economy and what is known as command economy. So under planned economic system, as I told you, is quite different from the mixed economic system. Under planned economic system, we observe that government is control of each and everything. But under mixed economic system, there is interventions of both. There is intervention of both. There is intervention of both command economy and mixed, and what is known as free market economic system. Let's come to methodology of economic analysis. Methodology is defined as a system of principles and practice, procedure, and techniques used to correct and analyze information in order to formulation of economic theories. So, under methodology, a system of principles protects the procedures and techniques used to correct and analyze information in order to formulate economic theories. So, an economic theory, what is an economic theory, by the way? An economic theory is a generalization based on a variety of facts about why an economic event occurs. The theory is generalization because it explains on how economic variables generally behave when a certain condition exists. So generalization based on a variety of facts, we speak about economic theories. When economic events occur. Economic theories are normally generals because they explain how economic variables generally behave when a certain condition exists. We have different kinds of economic theories. King demand theory, law of demand theory, and many other theories. So these theories are formulation regardless based on facts. A theory cannot become a theory regardless there is no fact. A theory consists of a set of definition of variables to be employed, a set of assumptions about how things behave, and the condition under which the theory is meant to apply. In general, the methodology of economic analysis is divided into three major categories. We have what is known as theoretical, we have deduction approach, we have theoretical approach, deduction approach, and induction approach. So, methodology of economic analysis relies on these kind of approaches. And actually, what you need to understand from these approaches, they quite operate in different manner. Theoretical is quite different from deduction and induction approach. Now, theoretical approach, this is a type of approach where a real world economics problem is analyzed by economists through a set of assumptions, which in effect gives a problem manageable proportions analyzable within the framework of a simplified model. So it is important to mention that theoretical approach can be illustrated graphically. For example, consider a simplified model of demand and supply that QD is equal to alpha plus BP, where B is less than 0 is less than alpha. That's the equation 1. Quantity supply is Y plus ILP 0 less than D, and Y is less than alpha. So in a market equilibrium, quantity demand is equal to quantity supply. Let's equate the quantity demanded and the quantity supply together. So when we create the quantity demand and the quantity supply, whereby we have our price, that is P. P represent out, we have the price, that is P. What it actually regarded is represented the product price, that is represented by P, and this denote that it is not out the quantity. It is not out the quantity demanded. So P is the product price, and it denotes the quantity demanded and the quantity supply. Respectively to what is known as alpha and Y and B together with D. So respective to alpha, Y, and B and D, these are parameters in our equations. We have the quantity supply equation and the quantity. demand equation. So P is the product price and denote the quantity demanded and the quantity supplied respectively. Alpha and YBD are what is known as the parameters in our equation. So the equilibrium in the market system occurs where the quantity we equate out the quantity demanded is equal to quantity supplied. Somebody may ask you a parameter. So our parameter we have this is a constant. This is a constant that is a variable. That is a constant that is a variable from our equation. From our equation 1 and equation 2 as well as equation 3. So parameter is constant that is a variable from equation 1, equation 2 and equation 3 as you observe. So long as parameters this as a constant does not change in one way or another. So the restriction that is B that is less than 0 and less than alpha implies that it actually implies the restriction of B that is less than 0 and less than alpha implies that the quantity demanded is positively related. Is positive when B less than 0 and less than alpha implies that the quantity demanded is positive when implies is 0. So the restriction of B less than 0 less than alpha implies that the quantity demanded is positive when the implies is 0. And actual the demand curve is has a negative relationship, or sometimes we term the negative slope. So the demand curve has negative slope. So let's come to restrictions on equations. That's equation 2. Take out restriction on equation 2 that is 0 less than alpha and y less than alpha. So when you take out the restriction from the equation number 2, it implies the restriction that you're given on the quantity demanded equation 2 implies that the supply curve is the supply curve is positively related, or is sometimes positive slope. So it actually implies that the supply curve is positive slope, is actually positive slope. So when you equate the two equations, you take out the two equations, that is equation 1 from the quantity demanded and the quantity supply. The equation number 2, that is 0 less than d and y less than alpha, implies that the supply curve is positive slope, and the more quantity demanded would be, and this implies that a more quantity will be supplied, and this means that the more quantity demanded will be supplied when the price of a given function, when the price is 0. So for that case, let's come and look on a substitution. Let's come and substitute the two equations, the equation number 1, and we have also the equation number 2. So we substitute equation number 1 and equation number 2 into equation number 3. This is like to say we take out a function that is quantity demanded is equal to QS and alpha plus BP is equal to y plus alpha p. So we equate the quantity demand and the quantity supply, that we take out alpha plus bp and y plus alpha p. So this implies the quantity supply in the right hand side and the quantity demanded. So when you get up the two equations, so let you make out the alpha, the subject from our equation. You make let you make out alpha minus y, take out alpha minus y, take out bp on the right hand side, it will be minus. This will give you dp minus bp. So take out alpha and make out the subject. Take out alpha minus y is equal to p alpha minus b. So long as you have plugged in the value of alpha minus I, and if you plug out the alpha p alpha minus b, so you obtain such kind of equation as observed. So another issue here, now we take out from our equation that you generate, that is alpha minus y is equal to p, then you take out alpha, you take out our d minus b, you express out our p, you express out p as a function of a parameter. You express out p as a function of parameter. This will give out now p, which is equal to alpha, then minus y over alpha over d minus b. So since we have the function of p, you may plug the function of p over the equation. So when you check out from our equation, you plug in p. This will give out now y. It will give out alpha minus y is equal to, instead of put p, you put out alpha minus y over d minus b. So we plug in the quantity of p into the equation. So we'll give you this when you plug in this to the equation. So the equation number 1, this will give out now. We'll take out our quantity demand and quantity supply. We take out the equation number 1, that is quantity demanded is equal to alpha plus bp. Take out our p and plug it there over there. This will give us the quantity demanded is equal to alpha plus p. Plug in p, that is alpha minus y over d minus b. Put bracket. For that case now, our QD will be equals to, when you take out the values over there, this will come and give a, when you apply the mathematics over there, take out alpha inside, it will give you alpha d minus by over d minus b. So this will obtain the quantity demand, that is alpha d minus by over d minus b. So the equation that is, so the equation that will express out, so the equation that will express out, so the equation will express out the two dependent variables. The equation will express out the two dependent variables. That is, so this equation will express out the two independent variables. For example, the price and the output as a function. The price and output as a function, that is p and q of alpha, yb, and d as well. So actually, that is how we demonstrate this kind of equation. So remember, we are speaking about this theological approach. We are speaking about this kind of approach. What you need to understand next, let's come to the second approach, that is empirical approach. This is the most widely used method followed by the applied economists. So this theory is then summarized logically in the context of simple model, which is a setup by specifying the number of assumptions that actually connects up the behaviors of economic variables under investigation. So actual empirical approach is the most widely used method followed by applied economists. So this CEO is a simple model which is set up by specifying the number of assumptions concerning the behaviors of economic variables under investigation. Actual empirical approach actually lies on the different methodology from what is known as an economic approach. So actual empirical approach relies on method followed by applied economics. Actually, the model also is sanctified to set up by specifying the number of assumptions and making and those assumptions from it to obtain the conclusion of a given fact. So the behavior of economic variables under investigation is done under what is known as empirical approach. Another, what you need to understand from here is that different from what is known as theoretical approach and economic theory and the empirical approach, we have another that is the deduction approach. So deduction approach, this is a logical reasoning yield in tiny number of predictions or testable hypotheses, which can be subjected to empirical testing. So you actually obtain the results and conclude on the result after hypothesis testing, based coming up with facts and assumptions solutions after hypothesis test has been done. In other words, the statistics are called examine the search of the general principles. A major problem with this approach is that economic statistics are so complex. Second, it is often difficult to distinguish them. Third, economists cannot perform laboratory experiments in the same way as the physical science can do. So that is the quite difference from this what is known as deductive approach. It's quite different that you may consider this kind of values. Let's come to look on the pitfalls of methodology of economic analysis. In the process of formulating an economic theory, we can easily make some mistakes in reason. These are the mistakes that occurs in the methodology of economic analysis. These are the mistakes that occurs in the methodology of economic analysis. Let's examine some mistakes that are prevalent in this economic analysis. The first mistake is the fallacy of composition. What is good or bad for one is necessarily good, bad for all. We may make fallacy of composition when we assume that what is true for one person or part of the economy is also necessarily true for the society as a whole or as the entire economy. So when you make a conclusion of the fact that actually this is not good, by actually regardless of presenting some single sample of people and presenting others, actually we speak about another mistake that is known as post fallacy. Another mistake is known as post hoc fallacy. This refers to the common mistake made when a person observes one event happen after another, concluding that the first event necessarily caused the second one. And we have another one that is ceteris paribus assumptions. Economics analysis based on ceteris paribus assumptions determines the constants while in true reality things are always equal. Economics analysis based on ceteris paribus assumes that things are kept constant, all things are equal, something that is not actually true. And we can refer this to what is known as law of demand. That assumes when other things are kept constant. Another one is what actually known as subjectivity. The greatest challenge of master economics is a subjectivity. It is subjectivity. Different economists have different views and opinions on approaches and the tackling of economic problems. You may find in the issue of subjectivity, some believe in mixed economy, some believe in common economy, some believe on mixed economy. So this kind of subjectivity brings what is known as also a pitfalls in methodology of economic analysis. It's quite different. People think different. People have different attitudes, regardless of a certain perspective. So some people actually develop a debate on certain issues because different ideas come from different people. Quite seems to be different. They are not quite the same at all. Let's finish up by looking at the positive and the normative economics. So normative economics is concerned with making suggestions about the ways in which society's goals might be more efficiently realized, while the positive economics is concerned with actually the fact that has been done. So thank you, and I welcome you to DC Economics.